And it's exactly 3 minutes after 8. Welcome to Talk. My guest seated, the MP for Ekuapem South constituency in the Eastern region, the Honorable Say Bonsu Amwa Obi Amwa, also John Alexander Akon, Deputy Minister of Gender, Children and Social Protection. I welcome you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
All right. We would start with some NPP politics. It's amazing. You are supposed to be preparing to possibly take over. But you have so many issues that some people don't think that you're ready, really. But what is happening in your party? Some people have described it as a possible coup.
Thank you, and good morning to viewers. I'm glad some of the headlines today read, no coup in NPP. It's quite interesting. It appears everything about NPP sells. So probably we should make sure that when we are selling NPP, maybe all the positive things come out so that we are sold well. Since yesterday, I've been following what's been happening, especially on your networks. And before the meeting, the steering committee meeting, in the first place, the Constitution provides for organization of the party. And under Article 9, if you go to 9I, there's the composition of the steering committee. The chairman, the vice chairpersons, all the national officers. And then, of course, the parliamentary leader and then the flag bearer. They constitute the steering committee. And theirs is to manage the party, administrative-wise, day-to-day management of the party. Well, that's the hierarchy. It's because from the steering committee that you go to the National Executive Committee, then you go to the National Council. Before, those are the committees before you get to Congress. That is the highest decision-making body. So steering committee meets as and when they decide to meet. And it's chaired and convened by the chairman. But the Constitution has specified that in the absence of the chairman, the first vice chairs. 11-member committee, quorum 7.
Yeah.
And they meet.
But I guess what is peculiar about yesterday's meeting was because apparently the chairman, who is out of the country, had scheduled a meeting for Thursday. And the general secretary, who is well in town or in Ghana, did not participate. That's raising a lot of questions.
I'm surprised that should raise a lot of questions. It's just like saying that the President Jomama was away. Vice President Misata chaired cabinet meeting, and then probably the Attorney General didn't turn up, or somebody very important in cabinet. It doesn't mean that one, there is no quorum. It doesn't mean that the person chairing the meeting does not have the mandate. And it doesn't mean that whatever the outcome of the meeting will not be binding on everybody. That's number one.
It's interesting how you're relating it, you know,
yeah,
to the other side.
Yes. That's what it is, whether you like it or not. Once you belong to a body, you're part of a body, the Constitution or whatever regulations spell out how meetings should be organized. Once the meeting is legitimate, people may speculate, it will be curious, etc. But when you go through it, nothing wrong would have happened.
So why would the General Secretary then say that he didn't know about this meeting, and why would they hurriedly do something like that?
I haven't heard the General Secretary saying he didn't know anything about it. I haven't heard it, frankly. If I've heard it, or if I've listened to him, it will be easier for me to talk about it. But the chairman, we all know, is out of town. And for whatever reason, once he's out of town, the first vice takes over. If the first vice believes that there's need for urgent steering committee meeting, and he gets the quorum, that's the most important thing. Because this is not just a mere body. A body comprising a flag bearer, national officers, elected ones, not even appointees, the elected ones, and the parliamentary leader. It's a very strong body. If the first vice, with his legitimate mandate, calls a meeting, and he gets the quorum, as I'm told, and the the item or the agenda is the vetting of parliamentary candidates, which indeed started yesterday. I've spoken to some of those who went for vetting. It started yesterday. That means that probably there was something urgent that they had to address before they moved on. So for instance, if there had been petitions, and you either give instructions that then the vetting should be put on hold, or you call an emergency meeting to discuss with your colleagues, and then they say probably the vettings could go on, but with such caveats.
You know, you're making it sound like all is well, but this is a quote that Kwabena Japong said to one of the reporters when he was called. And he says, and this is quote, "Tell them I am eating fufu in Kumasi. I don't know anything about this meeting."
Okay.
And this is something that he told one of our reporters.
Okay.
And he's questioning the need to organize a meeting so urgently that it could not wait for the return of the party chairman.
Okay.
Is all well?
Okay. I assuming that he said they asked for the eating fufu part. I'm sure.
I mean, it was just to say that I am around.
No,
you know, I could have been there.
As for eating the fufu part, I would say it's off record. But the other aspect, whether he felt whether it was necessary, that would be his opinion. And unfortunately, he will only be 1 out of 11. The other person is out of town. If, as I said, if the vice chair called a meeting and he had the quorum, that means obviously the others felt it was important. And for an organization, huge organization like this, if people tend to disagree, that's not the end of the world. I suppose at multimedia, you tend to disagree almost every day. There's no way 100% you agree on all issues. But that doesn't mean that all is not well at multimedia. If the general secretary thinks that this meeting should wait for the substantive chairman, and the rest think that no, the meeting should take place because vetting has started, unfortunately, he's been outvoted. Unfortunately, the others think otherwise. And then we have to go on. But that doesn't mean all is not well. Otherwise, no institution can function. Because it comes to parliament, you see us sitting together, drinking tea. We enter, we have our own opinions. So would you say in parliament all is not well because we disagree? Or are people expecting a perfect system? I don't see it that way. If we were to expect a perfect system, then nobody could run this country. Because, because our opponents, I don't think that they have a perfect system. Just recently, when some of the officers even had a press conference, others came out to disagree with them or to question them that that's not their role.
So you think it was a mere disagreements?
I mean, as far as I'm aware, this is not fundamental. Indeed, why the quote "no coup"? Because initially I heard, and I dismissed it with the contempt it deserved, that the steering committee was going to meet and they were going to pass vote of no confidence in the chairman and general secretary. I said, that is trivial talk, because under the constitution we have procedures for even saying that if you remove the chairman or any officer of the party. So there was no way the steering committee was going to do such a thing.
Okay.
So I think the media, yesterday afternoon, I listened. My good friend was even on one of the networks, gloating that, hey, there's something in the soup. There's something in the
So now you're blaming the media. You think we just made it loud?
No. That's why I heard an Akumia saying that they should leave their media to do their work. You felt it was important. Some people sent in messages attacking the host. Why is he dwelling so much on this matter? Nana Akumia came to his defense that that's your work. If you think it's newsworthy, why not? We went ahead to do it. But I'm saying that this is not any major thing, because some of us, we are so pro-party that if anybody should go against the constitution, we are ready to rise up. Assuming they had met yesterday and said that we've thrown away the chairman, that would have been a major thing. Some of us would have looked to the constitution and said, this and this and this, these are the things that are not right.
Do you expect the chairman to come back and support this meeting that went on without him?
Unfortunately, nowhere in the constitution does it say that at steering committee meetings he can veto. Nowhere. You convene and chair. So you convene and chair, but when you convene and chair, majority say that this is how we should do it.
So he cannot come and overturn the decision made?
I don't think so. The Constitution doesn't allow him to have that kind of authority. Otherwise, you could not run the organization. I don't think so at all. The Constitution, if I say I don't think so, it's as if I'm even conjecturing. He can't overturn anything done by the steering committee because he's part of the steering committee. In his absence, the first vice takes over. Once you have a quorum, a majority say that this is how we should do it. If there's anything, you can go upstairs. You bring in NEC, which is a larger body. If we have to go upstairs, you bring in National Council, a higher body. And if worst case scenario, has to go to Congress.
Some people within the party, you know, when you hear the way they talk, it's as if Freddie Blay has a personal agenda.
I'm yet to know, but if he has a personal agenda which is to the detriment of the party, then he will fail. That's my attitude. I want to know the so-called personal agenda. But if that personal agenda is not in the interest of the party, he won't survive. You should take it from me.
Mr. Alexander Akol, I mean, you are sitting in your little corner looking at all this and you're probably smiling.
He can't be in his little corner.
Because, you know, they're making all the headlines.
Yesterday I heard that, oh, why don't you finish with this and go to the Dumso matter? Which is, of course, the most critical thing, not MPP steering committee meeting.
That matter I can take over.
Yes. But I'll be happy if you are interested in that.
This could also happen to you, right?
No,
it
honestly, it doesn't
matter
which party it happens to. Ghana has decided to go multi-party democracy. So the country is as strong as stronger institutions like the political parties. So we should be interested in what happens in each order. And that is what moves Ghana forward. So you cannot sit at your corner. Nobody can sit at any corner.
Yeah. But I'm thinking that you're probably rejoicing,
no,
you know, when it's not you.
The extent you interfere, you will want to interfere with somebody's issue. But ordinarily, we should all be talking the same language when it comes to running political parties. So we can't just be sitting at any corner. But I think that we can advise ourselves, and we do, on platforms and everywhere, the way we feel about issues. We could jubilate, but the bottom line is that it is Ghana we are talking about. Now, if you follow the events, what Obi said ordinarily should be the case. But this is not an ordinary situation. Taking precedent from the election result, national election results, and the outcome, and you cannot refuse to say that there is perded outside, call it perception or the truism, I don't know, that there is a group against Kobre Japan and Afoko within the national executive.
And where are you picking that from?
Oh, if you follow events, immediately after the elections, they started to sit down to set up their committees. The first action by Afoko and Kobra was challenged. It brought a lot of issues. And one of the person who challenged strongly was Freddie Blay, the first vice chairman. It brought issues up. Now, assuming there's a good rapport between the chairman and the vice, this one should not be issued. It will be spoken about the president leaving. In spite of the constitutional provision of the vice president acting, one expects that when the president is traveling, we're going to discuss everything with the vice president. And similarly, it should happen in political parties. So that it will not be like, I wasn't there and you are taking action. They don't inform me those relationships. But more important, the Kobre Japan was in Ghana. He had not traveled. And this is a process of electoral process which they have set out. The first one was done. Kobra was the general secretary. He did all the write-up to the press, out to the processes to go on. So one would have expected that Kobra would have been the person to call the meeting on the orders of the chairman or the vice in this case, by claiming that he was not informed. That in itself brings a lot of issues. And to spite the processes, what he said that I'm in Kumasi eating my food, nobody has called me. So how come the general secretary was not called to call the meeting for them to meet? Was it to bypass him or something? It depends on time. So I think that nobody can.
But did they also need him to call the meeting?
Oh, normally it should be the general secretary who should be instructed by the chairman to call the meeting. And that's what happened when they first met at steering committee to plan the election.
You're saying normally, but unfortunately, when it comes to calling the meeting, it's the director FNA who calls the meeting, not the general secretary.
Okay.
The chairman instructs whoever is in charge of administration to call for meeting.
Kobre Japan called, the first one was called by Kobre Japan. He wrote all the issues to the
first, which first one?
The one which spelled out the election procedures.
Steering committee meetings are held every time, so it's not like there's a first one, there's a second one.
So it's not you know, like the sole responsibility of the general secretary. That's what you're saying, to call the meeting.
Yes. Yes. You can decide to negate it, but there's a real issue from developments. Obi Amwa. there are issues. And Kobra has stated it very clearly by the way he spoke, unless it's not the truth. And even a neutral observer when you read this one, you should know that it's not all that easy up there. So it's an issue of huge importance when you join the chairman and the general secretary against others. When obviously people know that Freddie Blay and Afoko have issues. So obviously there are some things they should solve. They should decide that quorum is important and therefore it is not important. To me, it will be in their interest to merge the warring factions in the group. It has traveled for too long. Right after elections up to today, one would have expected, like they all said, that election processes are like that. You should mend the fences when you finish. But if you want to take this long, God bless. But if you take our advice, it is important that you mend your fences.
I'll give you the last say on this one, since it's your party.
I wish you could also use the platform to advise his party, because they just recently had elections, and the divisions in there are huge. But they're saying that they are surviving. They're saying that everything is well.
They haven't had any issue like you did yesterday.
No,
with the steering committee.
When national organizer organizes a press conference and deputy general secretary comes to say that he should stay in his lane, unless he didn't hear that. When the NPP did the Wongbo demonstration, that very day they organized a press conference. The following day, the deputy general secretary said that is not his business. Everybody heard it on there, but I couldn't be bothered.
But haven't they moved on from that?
It's up to them, but some of us, from what we hear and know, they wouldn't have moved from there.
Okay, so in summary, you're saying that your issues are just like the NDC? No,
in summary, I'm saying that this is a normal organizational thing. Sometimes you may come across divisions, which divisions may come in the public domain, which the media will pick. And then the media have every right to interrogate said divisions. But I'm saying that the larger goal is to pursue the agenda of changing the incompetent government that is running this country now, so that Ghanaians will be relieved come 2017. That's the larger goal, and nobody will stand in our way. So indeed, when you are going for war, and any individual or any group of people try to create problems for the army would have to sacrifice there and move on.
Because you mentioned that, let me say what a political science lecturer at the University of Ghana had said, Dr. Ali Seidu, and he says that the NPP has a lot more work to do to convince Ghanaians that it is a government in waiting, that the poor performance of the ruling government is not a guarantee that the NPP would have an easy win in 2016.
Well, he's a political science lecturer, but I also graduated as a political science person 30 years ago this year. And when it comes to NPP politics, I can tell him that I know far more than any political science he would have studied. And I'm saying that towards 2000 elections, towards 2000, even 2004 elections, some of these things were normal things. We survived and came to power. So we should, the mere division between a general secretary and, let's say, acting chairman should not create the impression that this is not a government in waiting. They are running the party, fine. We should all assist in coming to power. But if a general secretary and even the acting chair has problems, we in parliament, we can tell you that we are more than ready to run this country. So it's good for you to interrogate it, but nobody should spin it and magnify it and let it think that the whole world is descending on us because at one steering committee meeting, General Secretary decided that it was important for him to attend, and the rest attended.
Let me also ask about
the government in waiting.
Let me ask about these persons who have been selected to lead the vetting processes. Is this necessary, do you think?
Well, the tradition, as far as I can recollect, the tradition is to get regional, national officers to supervise some of these things, vetting, elections, etc. That is the tradition. And even recently when we had the presidential primaries, that is what we tried to do. And it's for good reason, except that others too will say that if you make them part of it, and then when it comes to redress, petitions, they would already have been part of it, so they cannot sit on it. And then you need another body to to look at it. Those are the two schools of thought. But for most of the elections that we've done, what they do is to get national officers to move to the regions. Indeed, sometimes it's cosmetic, in a sense that one person cannot be at all the places, even though he says it's part of it's a national officer who has been asked to come and assist in vetting. He cannot be everywhere, except that he can program it in a way that if, for instance, a certain region is zoned into 4 or 5, you can then have the days so that he would try to be present at each of the vettings if there are 5 vettings in a region. Otherwise, he cannot be everywhere at the same time. And this is not fatal in any way.
Okay.
Well,
finally, is there anything positive that the NDC will be learning from this NPP experience?
Well, obviously, if you don't want your center to hold, that is your problem. But we thought that we should all make sure the centers hold very well.
For us.
So if you then have to immediately talk about NDC, well, Ghanaians are waiting to see. And at times I've stopped talking about the issue that you are preparing. In any case, the voting will decide where you should go.
Why not?
Nobody's a Ghanaian more than any other person, and we cannot talk for Ghanaians. We talk for our parties and maybe individuals. So those things don't play votes. But the important is that there's an issue. But just to support it, national officers do join vetting processes. They could even decide to do it at the regional level and get them to come on various days and times. That one, there's nothing wrong with it. So that one, there's nothing wrong. What happens is that guidelines are supposed to be used in vetting. And there are constitutional and party guidelines, which everybody should know. So they have to make sure that all the guidelines are stated in those provisions are complied with, so that we limit the level of controversy that will come if possible. And then the few ones would be taken up. So there's actually nothing wrong, except the fact that that fire, they should quench it. That's my small advice.
That's the decision they took yesterday.
Oh, I'm saying the fire.
It's a decision they took
don't
yesterday.
fight the fire, quench the fire.
It's a decision they took yesterday. So if, assuming even all the 11 had gone for the meeting, and then 6 had voted for it and 5 had voted against, it would still have been a decision. But there would have been 5 people against that decision.
Obi, but ordinarily, if I'm your vice and we have a relationship, we should reflect on the way we conduct our business.
Somebody even said that we agreed to join parties, but it doesn't make us friends.
Who says we should be friends? We shouldn't be friends.
Of course.
It's not there. Yeah. But when it comes to rules of operation, it should be common to all of us.
In the absence of the chairman, if there's something urgent, which in the opinion of the acting chairman, he should call for a meeting, that should be the end of the matter. You should go to the law and see whether he's infringed on any of the provisions of the law, and then take him on. If he hasn't infringed on any provision, even if he be acting chairman for a day, so long as he runs the place as an acting chairman, he doesn't go against the constitution, let him do his work.